Have the adoption of the agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Safety briefing, John Connor, Director of Water Wastewater Project Engineering Construction.
Thank you, Chair Stein and members of the board. My name is Sean Connor, and I'm the Director of Project Engineering and Construction for Water and Wastewater Systems, and I've been at JEA for 15 years. My team is responsible for coordinating and executing all of the large capital infrastructure projects for water and wastewater. We manage projects throughout all phases of scoping, budgeting, design, construction, and commissioning. My team works on projects to rehabilitate and build new water and wastewater treatment plants, wells, pump stations, and conveyance piping for our system. Before we have our safety moment, let's take a minute to go over a safety briefing. For those of us participating downtown, in the event of an emergency, our JEA security department will contact 911 and coordinate any required evacuation. If the emergency requires an evacuation, use the stairwell, not elevator, and you will assemble at the First Baptist Church parking lot located at the corner of Ashley and Main Street. If anyone needs medical assistance or help with safely evacuating, please notify a nearby JEA security officer. Always be cognizant of the potential for trip hazards in and around your respective areas. Lastly, please remember to keep your cell phones on silent and laptops on mute while not actively speaking during today's board meeting. This morning, I'm going to talk about planning for safety. Project construction work is inherently dangerous, so safety is something that always needs to be on our minds, even before the work is started. A few months ago, we experienced an incident where a large vessel was dropped during a lifting operation. The lifting contractor incorrectly identified and used an attachment point that was not rated to lift the vessel. The attachment point failed, causing the vessel to drop about 2 feet onto the foundation. Thankfully, nobody was near the vessel when it fell and only minimal damage occurred. This incident could have been prevented if the contractor had taken the time to plan for safety. This is a critical element for management of all construction projects, regardless of the complexity, since hazards can exist in all circumstances. At JEA, we plan for safety by taking a critical look at all potential hazards that may exist and determine how to mitigate those hazards. We also make sure the proper materials and equipment are selected to safely complete the job. The process requires commitment from everyone involved. We ensure strong communication by performing pre-job safety briefings, job hazard analyses, and post-work evaluations. Thank you for your time this morning, and please continue to keep safety in mind throughout your day.
Can we move to the consent agenda and see if we can get a motion to approve as a whole?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. So today, I wanted to recognize John Baker, who we moved back in this journey 2 years ago. We as a community, we as a JEA, we as 2,000 employees were in very precarious situation. And, you know, we needed stability, we needed trust, and we needed a renewed culture. And we came together as a board, selected, weren't able to really communicate as most boards are. And John really stepped forward, and there are few people in this community that can show the leadership that John Baker showed. We were dealing with COVID. We were dealing with a grand jury investigation, and we were dealing with confidence, not only in our JEA, but in our community. And we were blessed to have John come forward. Before I go through his accomplishments, you know, this community have had great leaders to walk through this town, but John is a special one. And I want to walk through some of his accomplishments, and probably will not hit all of them. But the biggest thing that we did from the beginning was bringing in Paul McElroy, which was not easy. He retired in an uncomfortable situation. He came back with John's full confidence. Making that change was very, very difficult. He got the confidence of the customers. He got the confidence of the employees. And I don't think nobody will realize, because when we walked in this situation, nobody knew what we're getting ourselves into. Marty and I were involved in this board before. We were in a very good management situation, but this was this could have been untold problems that we faced. And I think within a few days, everybody realized that we had a real leader at top. Bringing back Paul was a big, big accomplishment. Taking the search for a permanent CEO and finding Jay, and Jay bringing his team and building the unbeatable team that we have today. And John agreed to a second term, which, with all John has going on in his world, from business to nonprofits, he's in kids and grandkids, he is given a tremendous amount of time and effort. But I just want to walk through some of these accomplishments. And, John has been instrumental in guidance with the construction of the new JEA corporate headquarters, which when we started, we reviewed the construction and saved, I think, close to $15 million. John was also very involved in JEA on Plant Vogel, units 3 and 4. It's been an untenable situation again, working with Southern Company. We had a lawsuit against our partners. Jay and John put together an agreement to settle that lawsuit, which, built back confidence with the rating agencies, built back confidence with our financial community, and it was not easy to do. We were in litigation with MEAG, which was a longtime partner of ours, and that hurt us in a lot of areas. And between Jay and John, they quickly changed the perspective of a trusted partner. From 20 to 22, John provided strong leadership as he participated in the rating agency presentations. He took part in sharing the great story about JEA stability and financial and operational metrics, capital program funding, debt reduction rates, and infrastructure. He showed the strength of the board's oversight and governance. Under his leadership, the water system received a rating update from Moody's in September 2020 from A2 to AA3. Just last week, Moody's upgraded the electric system credit rating from A2 to A1. And we're expecting favorable credit ratings for our other systems this year. Since July of 2020, JEA has launched a $518 million in electric and water system refunding bonds offerings with a net present value of $140 million. JEA saw a $104 million electrical system early debt retirement in 2021 and $75 million in Plant Shear and St. John's Power Park early debt retirements in January 22. With the closing of Plant Shear Unit 4 in January 2022, with a long-term 200 megawatt power purchase agreement with Florida Power and Light, JEA generate $200 million in present value savings. Balance the needs of our customer and financial stability, John provided guidance as JEA worked with the development community to continue to provide quality services at affordable rates. Earn customer loyalty. In support of the growth in Jacksonville Southside area, JEA broke ground just last week on the Greenland Water Reclamation Facility. JEA's first new water reclamation facility in Duval in 45 years. In support of JEA's mission to improve lives and building community in partnership with the City of Jacksonville, JEA has made a substantial progress with the completion of 3 major septic tank phase-out projects to benefit of more than 3,400 property owners. John has a deep love for Jacksonville. JEA customers are the why behind everything that motivates John on this board, as he continues to provide an innovative direction and make JEA a trusted customer advisor. To further improve the quality of life in Northeast Florida, John provided invaluable guidance to staff as we work to strengthen partnerships with economic development agencies, design programs to provide incentives for new and existing customers, and work to expand services and invest infrastructure that supports a vibrant and thriving downtown Jacksonville. Under John's leadership and Jay's leadership, JEA has recently been recognized as the 14th among 500 companies named to Forbes 2022 list of best American-sized companies. John, we're blessed to have your leadership, and this city and this community will be better off for the work that you've done. And I just, special thanks. And we have the special lady that's represented our employees that wanted to make a statement. Valerie, do you want to come up? Yeah. Oh, great.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing us a few minutes. I think we're all on the same page associated with Mr. Baker and the amazing job that he's done. But before I start there, I just want to acknowledge JEA's amazing Women's History Month. Everybody that participated, everybody that put it together, and those in the background that supported us. So thank you very much on that. So before I get started, I also want to introduce the other union leaders with me. This is Ronnie Burris, Business Manager of Liuna 630, Randy Hilton, PEA President, Kathleen Crow, she's the Ask Me President. And even though Rick Lehman is not here, we have Paul Avedon for JSA. So thank you. And between all of us, we represent about 1,600 of the JEA employees. So the last 2 years they have gone by pretty quickly. But during this time, the board headed by Mr. Baker had to make some tough and not easy decisions to keep JEA moving forward. So before this board was selected, the JEA employees endured uncertain times and continued to keep the lights on. And we appreciate the board for acknowledging the employees' resilience and hard work during that time. We also appreciate being included into the process of the new CEO. And from what I've seen with working with Jay, you should be proud of your selection. And as we present a plaque, this plaque of appreciation for Mr. Baker, please understand it is extended to everyone that was on the board during this time. We look forward to working with each and every one of you as we continue to build an unbeatable team. So with that, this is a plaque that we all came together, and it says, with our greatest appreciation, we hereby present John Baker, who is chair, the various board members that were here during that time. We even included Dr. Leon Haley Jr. For your unwavering support and unrelenting guidance that helped in leading our path to success. You're being honored with much appreciation and gratitude, presented by Liuna, Ask Me, IBW, JSA, and PEA. So we appreciate all that you've done to keeping us moving forward. So thank you very much, Mr. Baker. Yeah.
Bobby, you're too kind, way too kind. Obviously, all the things you said that happened happened because of this group and the team that Jay has put together. I just mostly said, okay. You've been an amazing help to me as vice chair, and I will always be grateful for that. I've loved doing this job, and it's never been anything but fun. It's interesting. You're around smart people. We've got a great team. JEA's in a great place right now. And Valerie, thank you so much. More than all the accolades that could come from you all as a fellow board members, coming from the employees, means the most to me. And I'm so grateful, and thank you.
Well, John, leadership's important, and you will always be remembered for one of the special leaders in our community, and especially not only for all the businesses you're involved in, all the extra things you do in our community that nobody knows about and things people know about to help the disadvantaged. But more importantly, this was important time for leadership, and you showed it. So thank you. With that, we have, before we forget, the board and the staff have something special for you.
Wow.
I didn't break it.
If this is my meter, it's probably not been fully paid. Thank you.
Hey, Bobby, can I say something real quick?
Absolutely.
John, you're way too modest, and no one is surprised that how modest you are. But again, just the job you did in leading us when it was real tumultuous times, and not being afraid to make the tough calls. I personally have learned a hell of a lot from you on just how boards work and all that. But just your selfless service to not only the board, JEA, and the community is pretty inspiring. So it's an honor working with you.
Appreciate it.
Well, and I'll go back to when we were trying to reconvene a board to run this amazing organization. Someone reached out to me and said, would you be interested in coming back? First thing I asked is who else? Who else is on the board? And I heard John Baker's name and I said, I'm in. So thank you for that.
Certainly been an honor serving with you and getting to know you, and most importantly, learning from you. As has been said, I have learned a heck of a lot watching and listening, and the steady hand and thoughtful deliberation and the way that you brought us together to move through and discern the important decisions will stick with me forever. And I can only hope to emulate your leadership as I go forward. So this has been a real honor and a formative experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
John, obviously, I've only been here for the last 6 months, but watching you as board chair has been an honor, and I just hope I can live up to your standards someday. So thank you for everything you've done for the citizens of Jacksonville, the employees of the JEA, and everyone else involved. Thank you.
Well, I learned how to negotiate because Rick has built 2 houses.
Dr.
Good morning,
Faison?
John. Yeah, good morning,
Dr.
John.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Good morning. I just want to really just say to John, we all know we came into this at an incredibly difficult time, and to have had your steady hand and leadership, it was just indispensable, I think, to building the trust back in our community with regard to JEA. And it has been a privilege to work under your leadership. And I just want to thank you for everything that you did to help to kind of just get us through that very, very difficult period. And I don't think anyone else was better situated to do that than you. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Zachary. And I love the new floor at the gym.
Thank you.
I clearly there's enough has been said, but I want to reiterate a couple of things that go kind of missed sometimes. And I appreciate that Joy Ditto is here with us, because the role that all of the board and you in particular played for what was going on at JEA had a bigger impact than just the local community. What was happening here as a municipal utility would have had ripple effects across the country more than we normally talk about. And so the steady hand that you brought to help with all of the rest of the board is more impactful than we might even understand, given our role within the community. And then for everyone else, I have some suggestions for you. If you ever have an opportunity to work on a board with a person like John Baker, to work for a board with a person like John Baker, then I would suggest taking that. It's an honor to be here. And if you ever have a chance to be the chair of a board, then do it like John Baker did it. And I appreciate the opportunity to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Well, with that, I just want to add one thing through this last 2 years is Tom and Leon Haley, dealing with the COVID situation in their health systems and being part of this board. It's just so impressive. I mean, it just, the mission that you and Leon put forth is impressive. The second thing is John Baker's the only guy that know to leave chairman of the board when gas prices are rising. But with that, I'll hand it to Jay.
I think we have public comments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Other public comments.
Yes.
Then, and I don't know if there's anyone here in the room or who has signed up for public comments inside. Landon, is there anybody online that wants to speak?
We can go ahead and proceed with the public comment section to inform the public how they can raise their hand. Once again, this is Landon, and for those in the audience that have joined us via the WebEx technology, we're going to give a brief overview of the controls for public comments. Now, if you're joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device such as a cell phone or a tablet, you may move around the screen and see a series of buttons at the bottom. Now, the very first one you may notice looks like an icon of a microphone. It's red, but should be you're muted and will be on mute for the majority of the meeting unless recognized to speak. Now, if you're recognized to speak or asked to provide comment, you'll click on that button and it will turn green. This will mean that you're unmuted and we can hear you. I do ask that you use this option to mute your line when you are not speaking, and this will allow us to reduce the amount of background noise for today's meeting. Now, located on the right side, you'll find an icon that looks like a person labeled participants. Now, this option will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined today's meeting, and we've got about 143 for today's meeting. Now, at the top of this list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you'll notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. Now, if you click on that hand, it will turn blue, letting you know that you would like to be recognized for comment. For those that may have called in directly, and we do have a couple, there are two additional ways that you may notify me that you would like to provide comment. The first is by pressing *3 on your telephone. This will raise your hand, and then you would be able to press *6 to unmute your line. Now, if you do unmute your line, we do ask that you state your first and last name so everyone can hear who is speaking before you proceed. Now, as we go through the meeting, I'm the moderator and have the capability to mute your line if you accidentally come off mute, but I'll only do so if I need to. So for those, if you would like to be recognized to speak for public comment, go ahead and raise your hand or type in the chat session as well, and we will take a look. Seeing none, I have no raised hands, and there is nothing in the chat. We'll turn it back over to y'all. Thank you.
Jay?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the ability that we have to do this with the virtual, to give the opportunity for more people, even if people don't take us up on it. I think is a great thing for our community that they have access to be able to let you all know what's going on. So I'm glad that we do that, even though sometimes there are no comments. So Bobby Stein, this is not your first time serving as chair, but I would like to say thank you. We've thanked John Baker, and now you are sitting in that seat. I appreciate that you are, we're willing to say yes to serve in this role again. It's an important role. It's an important board for this community, and I look forward to working with you for the next, John, this is 2 years, right? It's a 2-year term the way you did.
Normally, yeah.
That's
I don't think Bob.
the next little while. Fair. So at the end of February, several leadership team members attended the American Public Power Association legislative rally in Washington, D.C. We met several members of the Florida congressional delegation, and we also met with officials from a lot of other areas, the Department of Energy, working on grid resiliency and cybersecurity, talked with the Electric Power Research Institute, leaders of the American Water Works Association. All of those conversations were related to and tied to our mission of becoming the nation's best utility. We talked to those groups about what we can do to be better at what we do, to learn about new regulations, new laws, and a lot of the funding sources that are in and around the DC area right now. We spent time sharing the great things that we all are doing every day at JEA. As a public power advocate and the 8th largest electric municipal utility in the nation, we think that we're well positioned to work with our elected officials on legislative matters that are not only important to us here in Northeast Florida, but really to the 49 million customers that are served by public power across the country. So speaking of APPA, I said earlier, we're honored to have Joy Ditto here, who's the president and CEO of American Public Power Association. She's with us today to give us an industry update and a broader view of the world from DC and around the country. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Valerie mentioned earlier the Women's History Month. We had a virtual panel discussion centered around the theme of women providing healing and promoting hope. And I'd like to thank the panelists, Renetta Curry Marshall, Laura Dutton, Valerie Gutierrez, and Chris Pruitt, who shared life experiences of wisdom with all of us. And I'd like to extend a special appreciation to Nikki Kimbleton, the Director of Public Affairs for the Mayor's Office, who moderated the event for us. Most of the time when we have a board meeting, I'm able to update you on some positive things, awards, and recognitions that we have received. And this is no different this month. Some of the things that we were working on, none of these are things that happened between the last meeting and this meeting. It takes a lot of years of hard work and experience and knowledge to be able to do this, mixed in with some new talent. And we're going to hit on some of the awards because there's a limited time, and we are being recognized in lots of different ways. We were honored with a statewide utility safety award from the Florida Municipal Electric Association, recognizing our commitment to employee safety and safe utility operations. It's one of our core values. Safety is both physical and emotional well-being, and it allows us to continue to provide reliable and safe utility services to our customers. I'm thankful every single day that our employees are able to go home safely and to come to a place that we support what they're doing in their broader life. Speaking of FMEA, we also had several line worker teams that were involved in the rodeo at Fort Pierce in late February. We placed first in the Hurt Man Rescue event, second in the 4 kV cross arm changeout, and fifth overall at that team competition. And then the teams went just a couple of weeks ago to the APPA National Line Workers Rodeo in Austin and had really good showing, placing first in the Hurt Man Rescue, third in the 4 kV cross arm changeout, and third in the 12 kV polymer insulator changeout. These are technical things that our line workers and our employees do every single day in the field. And this is a fun way to show their expertise, but more importantly, how they do these things safely. Because you don't finish in first place in any of these events if you do something that's not safe in that process. So we do it safely, and then we're technically competent to be able to do this. And I'm glad that we're able to participate this. We have some of our crews that are participating on the water side of a rodeo coming up soon. It really does help us to know that we are doing the right thing, that we are improving lives and building community. I lost my other page. There it is. Two other things that I want to be sure that we bring up, reiterate. That Bobby mentioned this, but I'm very proud of the fact that we were named to Forbes 2022 list of America's best mid-sized companies out of listed 500, and we were 14th on that rank, not of utilities, not of municipal utilities, of all mid-sized companies in the country. This is a recognition, not an award really, a recognition that is something that we don't pay to participate in. They do the survey. And so it really means a lot that we have started to make a difference that our employees recognize, because that's how this is, how they go about this survey. We also learned last week that we were upgraded by Moody's that you mentioned earlier. That is a third party that says we're doing some things well. And I appreciate that we are making that process. Today, those are both positive stories and news. We have a few presentations today that we'll go over. A couple of them focused on new business, a very short Vogel update, and a little bit more in depth on the transmission lines crossing the river. That's on the agenda as the Fulton cut transmission lines. These transmission lines have been sort of a little bit of a hot topic in the press over the last few weeks. Since December, we've had several meetings with the Corps of Engineers, and we're on track to do exactly what we told them we would do, is complete a study to determine the cost and the risk associated with raising those lines. Renetta is going to review in a little more detail the older study that was completed a couple of years ago. And then once the new study is complete later this month, we will set up opportunities to meet with the Corps of Engineers, discuss next options and next steps, including funding alternatives. So we are working to improve lives and build community every single day. And just as a reminder, we're doing that through the lens of the values, safety, respect, and integrity. I continue to be nervous that I started doing this, but so that we don't miss someone, I would, between now and our next meeting, Dr. Faison is going to have a birthday, so happy birthday to Dr. Faison. I continue to be proud beyond words to be able to represent the 2,000 people that keep this system up and running every day to serve the people of Northeast Florida and to work with you. Thank you for that opportunity. If there's questions, we can cover those, and I look forward to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
We won't sing.
Oh,
With that, hand this over to Joy. Joy, thank you. And this is another long-term relationship that Jay and John rebuilt quickly.
Mhm.
And appreciate you coming to Jacksonville. I know you have a busy schedule, but one of the things Jay and I talked about is getting people in our industry to tell us where they see the industry, where they see, challenges, opportunities in the industry. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Joy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to members of the board and to Jay and his great management team, and also the employees of Jea who've done such a fabulous job. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to just jump right in to the next slide. So just a bit about who APPA is before we get started. APPA is the National Trade Association representing the interests of the approximately 2,000 publicly owned utilities nationwide, which means they're publicly owned, not for profit. They're in 49 states and 5 territories, and there's one state missing, unfortunately, which is the state of Hawaii, so we'll not be going there for any of our meetings. We serve 49 million customers and employ 96,000 people. Just to put in perspective, that's about 15% of the industry nationwide. That obviously varies by state. Some states are more, the footprint is larger, some smaller. That's an average, but 49 million customers also equates to about 10 to 12 million more customers than the entire country of Canada. So we're still serving a very decent swath of our of our population and of North America. APPA itself, we have about 1,500 of those 2,000 public power utilities are our direct members. And then we have some corporate associate members who do not get to vote on our policies. We also have state associations. Jay mentioned FMEA and joint action agencies as members, which are a consortium of our member utilities. We have a very diverse membership. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power mentioned here is our largest member with 1.4 million customers, people, meters. So that's approximately 3 million, close to 3 million people. And then we have the vast majority, however, of those entities serve less than 5,000 people. So I'll talk about JEA specifically in a bit, but JEA is one of our very largest members. We have 65 full-time staff located in beautiful Northern Virginia, right across from Reagan National Airport and the Pentagon, where I understand one of your board members served at one point. And we have lobbyist engineers and other subject matter experts. So in terms of briefly JEA's involvement with APPA, we have 689 of those 2,000 employees are active in our database. And so they're getting publications or interacting with us in some way on our committees. We have a newsletter that comes out a few times a week called Public Power Current, and JEA has been featured in that before. So we have a couple of hundred subscribed to the Current, and also receiving Public Power Magazine, which comes out every couple of months. Also features interesting stories about what's going on in the industry. And JEA board members can receive these publications should you so choose, so let us know. Also, we have a really interesting group that is involved with APPA. So we have a board of directors, of course, and the way we do our board of directors is by region of the country, since we have such a broad footprint. We also have a group called our Policymakers Council. And by policymakers, we mean people who are local policymakers, like boards, locally elected and appointed boards, city councils, or mayors are eligible to participate in this group. And they are also nominated by region, nominated by the general manager of the utility to participate in this august group, which helps us in our advocacy efforts in Washington. So you have Mr. DeSalvo, who is participating in that group, and they really make a difference for us. People in Washington, especially in Congress, are very interested to hear from fellow locally elected or appointed officials, community leaders. It just is a dialogue that can happen in a very different way than when the general manager comes in or when we're talking to them. We have our role to play, of course, but it's a different conversation, and having you all participate in that way is very helpful to public power writ large. So thank you. Also, Jay has just been nominated to participate in a group called the Electricity Subsector Coordinating Council, which is a mouthful, ESCC. After 9/11, in discussions with the government and kind of as a result of that devastating situation, and the Homeland Security Act of 2002 was implemented, there was a decision to engage more fully with critical infrastructure sectors, such as electricity. And so there was established a methodology where each critical infrastructure sector could have a coordinating council made up of industry leaders who could then interface with the federal government and not have those conversations be public because of the sort of national security implications and potential for terrorists, to infiltrate. So each of the 16 critical infrastructure sectors, water is another, has a sector coordinating council. In the energy sector, there are a few. There's oil and gas, there's downstream gas, and there is electricity, which is why it's called a subsector. This is a very important group comprised of about 40 CEOs from across the industry, including in public power, as well as important trade associations in Washington, D.C., trade association heads. I also sit on it. And we have 4 public power representatives on this group, in addition to me. So Jay went through a nominations process, and the board, APPA Board of Directors, chose him to be one of our representatives. Very important. Thank you, Jay, for doing that. Okay, so also wanted to just say, just announced, and I'm going to present this award now, although you all know, we have something called our Reliable Public Power Provider Designation, and it's a forward-looking designation, peer-reviewed, which factors in a number of things related to electric reliability, workforce, safety, that also talks about system improvement and how you're looking forward and improving your system over time. And this year, JEA it was just announced that for the next 3 years, you will be a Diamond Reliable Public Power Provider, RP3, which is the highest level. So congratulations, and here's the plaque, which I'll pass down.
Huge.
Just a second. This one of the things I think is important to mention, there's a team of people that work to put the package together, but it is a reflection of the things that we do every single day. And so it really does show another third party kind of outside view that we're making good decisions. So thank you and congratulations really to the team that does this every day. What happens when we get these things is that some of the board and I might be able to be in a picture with you in a little while, but it really is all of the other people every day that are doing this. So thank you for the recognition.
Absolutely. Well, and there's also, we do on our safety award, we have a process whereby we look at safety data. And we also, that's a look back award. So we look back at the previous year, that's an annual look back. JEA also received the APPA Safety Award for 2021 that was just announced. I wanted to mention the Line Workers Rodeo, and you already mentioned that, Jay, as well, won in 3 major categories, which just again goes to show the focus that you all have in your line worker community. And then there's a powerful benchmarking tool that we developed. We actually have a patent on it. And when I say we, I mean my brilliant engineer, Alex Hoffman, and has a patent on this e-reliability tracker, which enables us to track reliability at a granular data and benchmark it against the other 500 utilities participating. So that is a great tool you all can use as well as you continue to up your game on the reliability side. So moving into APPA's strategic priorities, I just wanted to, and this kind of gets in, Mr. Chairman, to some of what you're talking about in terms of that external view and what you wanted to hear from me a bit today. APPA's priorities really are a reflection of the priorities of our membership, sort of the direction that the industry is going. We are, let me just be clear, we're a national trade association. We do not advocate at the state level unless we are asked by all of our members in the state to weigh in on a matter, but that's very rare. We do sometimes get involved in buyouts, sellouts, and municipalization activities, again, at the behest of the community or the members we're serving there. But that's more for informational reasons and for talking about the value of the public power business model. So when we're talking about our priorities, we're really focused here on the national level. Just recently, our board engaged in a business planning process whereby we combined our strategic and financial plans. Go figure. Seems like a good idea to do from the get-go, but we had not done that before because we had a defined benefit pension plan that was hanging over our heads that we needed to fully fund, and we needed to transfer off of our balance sheet, which we did in 2020 during the pandemic. I want to applaud my staff for their hard work in getting that done and the members who helped make that happen. So we funded that plan and transferred it off of our balance sheet. So now it feels like we've paid off our mortgage and our student loans at the same time, which gave us a real opportunity to take a step back and say, where do we need to go on behalf of our members as we move forward? And we looked at our strategy, we looked at our financials, and we focused in on these 4 areas, which we've been circling around for a few years, but this was a reiteration during this planning process that we were going in the right direction in terms of these 4 pillars. So advocating for public power, continuing to do that, that's our bread and butter, one of our reasons for being, which is promoting policies before the federal government on behalf of public power, educating decision makers and stakeholders, which Mr. DeSalvo helps us do when he's up there, and increasing awareness of the public power business model in various places. Moving public power forward is the second, which is really as we deal with the changes that are happening in our industry, that we're really in a major transition, moving into clean energy, really responding to customers' needs. I'll get to that in a second. There is a lot going on, very complex and very challenging right now. And this bucket really helps us take a look across the industry, do what we can to lay some groundwork and set the table for our members to then analyze how they might want to meet these challenges. Strengthening grid security is taking an all hazards approach, to creating a more resilient and secure grid. And it's really kind of the yang to the yin or the yin to the yang of moving public power forward, because a lot of what we need to do as we meet our customers' needs is digitize our distribution grids even more, to enable that conversation to occur between our customers and ourselves or our member utilities. And that unfortunately brings the risk of cybersecurity, right? So part of the grid security piece is dealing with cybersecurity. We're not going to put that genie back in the bottle. We have to risk manage it over time, but we want to be able to help and focus ourselves getting that relationship with the federal government strong, so we understand what their perspective is on cyber. We can help our members understand what's going on. We also were looking, of course, at other hazards, physical security, also just storms that you all have to deal with all the time. We're enhancing our mutual aid efforts at the national level, working across the sector to help out when we have major storms like hurricanes, looking at wildfires in the West. We also have a real strong story to tell in our industry about how we responded to the pandemic. And I want to thank all of the workers who kept the lights on here in Jacksonville, as well as across the country during a pandemic. So thank you very much. It goes unsung often. I try to sing your praises wherever I can, but it's not often acknowledged. And then promoting association excellence is our just work internally to make sure we're being efficient, using our dues dollars wisely, and looking at our programs over time, eliminating things that need to be eliminated, and which is hard to do. Even though we're a small organization, we're kind of like the federal government. We don't like to stop doing anything. So we are evaluating that and analyzing that. One of the things about the business plan as well is that we have a dues formula that is based on revenue, customer count, and kilowatt hour sales from each of our member utilities. That fluctuates slightly based on the marketplace, but we have had an adder over and above that dues formula for a long time to help us fund our defined benefit pension plan. We have taken that adder off. We are not increasing our dues beyond the formula for the next 5 years under the business plan that was approved by our board recently. Okay, so just quickly on the advocacy side, the congressional agenda is not our agenda. We have to react to it. I'm just letting you know, and I have a typo in here. I realized belatedly, Ketanji Brown, Jackson Brown, there shouldn't be a second Brown in there. We can fix that. But just to let you know, kind of the major focus in Congress right now is around obviously the confirmation hearing. And actually, I think I saw this morning that Ketanji Brown Jackson was approved out of committee on a tied vote. That means she can still move forward to the Senate floor. And so that's a focus right now in the Senate, especially. The Russian invasion of Ukraine, of course, is taking up a lot of focus, and there may be some bipartisan efforts in that area, which would be helpful. There is something called the Build Back Better Act, which is really the Democrats' broad proposal on climate change, which is really has stalled quite heavily and is probably on life support at this point. It may be rebranded and reworked as we go later into the year, including on something that we care about, and there is some overlap with our advocacy agenda on, which I'll talk about in a second. And then another piece which we follow closely, and that there is going to be some focus on, sometimes there are these big ticket items, and then underneath that there are some smaller things that don't get a lot of media attention that are still moving forward, even yes, in a bipartisan way. One is the Water Resources Development Act, and that is, I'm sure, of interest to JEA. And it funds sort of projects on national waterways, and we're watching that as well. So in terms of our congressional priorities at APPA and public power, and how they kind of overlap with what the real focus is, we are watching the space of climate change, but we don't think that legislation will move anytime soon on a comprehensive package, although there may be some committee efforts, and we have to take those seriously because they do lay groundwork. We do think, however, on the second bullet, that comparable incentives, which is, as you know, as the board of JEA, we cannot take advantage of tax incentives because we are not for profit. And so that has really hindered us as public power from being able to build some of the new clean generation. We can do it, but financially it makes it more difficult when we can get a purchase power agreement with a third party private company that can take advantage of tax credits that are being given by the federal government. So we have long sought a comparable incentive. That is also true of the rural electric cooperatives who are private and not for profit, who also have the same problem that we do. We are looking at a direct pay refundable credit as an option there, and are heartened that maybe that will get pulled out of that broader Build Back Better Act later in the year, perhaps even in a lame duck. We also care about bond modernization and would like to restore advance refunding. We have some support for that as well. We'll see where that goes. Implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Sometimes that goes by the bipartisan infrastructure bill. The infrastructure bill that has passed already. There is some funding that still needs to happen of some of the programs that were created. So not everything has been implemented yet. We at APPA, our role is to provide you all information about what is happening on the implementation of this bill where relevant to JEA and our members. We are not in the business of supporting particular grant proposals from our members because that could get us crosswise with our own members. But we do have a listserv and part of our website that's dedicated to implementation of the IIJA. And we've held a couple of webinars. We're holding another one later this month on that piece. So there is a lot of funding. I'll touch on the numbers in a second, which are pretty staggering. There's a lot of money available. Also, grid security. Often on this one, unfortunately, in Congress, we're playing defense because we already have standards on cybersecurity at the bulk power system level that many of our members have to adhere to, and we've had those for 15 years. Other critical infrastructure sectors do not have cybersecurity standards. We do. But oftentimes we get looped into these proposals around grid security that can be detrimental to us since we already have standards and sort of taking an over-regulatory approach. So we're often on the defense when it comes to those efforts. Natural gas is an issue. Not just the price of natural gas, but given what happened with Winter Storm Uri in the middle of the country last year, and how the price spikes really were unprecedented. I don't like using that word; it's overused. But the fact of the matter is we had not seen those kinds of prices ever in modern history. And so, looking at the prices, but also the reliability challenges that posed, we are relying more and more on natural gas as an industry. We need to see if we can rectify some of this. It's going to be difficult. We don't have a lot of leverage with natural gas suppliers to negotiate something that would be more amenable to electricity providers. Even cross-sectorally, we do not have much leverage, but we are still talking about efforts we can undertake. And APPA has some policy positions around at least some sort of stopgap price mechanism in the case of an emergency that may come into play. Also winterization of gas compressors, things like that in the places where that matters. And then I talked about the Water Resources Development Act. So I mentioned the IIJA, and these are just a snapshot of how much funding is available. I mean, these are billions of dollars of funding for electric vehicles, broadband, electric and grid infrastructure, resiliency, including cybersecurity. These are big numbers. We worked really hard as APPA to make sure that public power was eligible for for all of these different components. And just generally on the broadband piece, that all electric utilities would be eligible from the get-go, that would not be a question in the rulemaking process. So now I'm just going to pivot quickly for a few minutes to public power challenges and kind of step back and talk about the challenges and opportunities that we're seeing in the industry. And I started with what's going on in Congress because some of those challenges are being acknowledged at the federal government level with some additional funding, with some additional policy focus, which I won't get into here. But we also can meet some of these challenges right here in our communities. We don't need the federal government to meet them for us. They're creating some of the challenges in some cases. So I won't get into that either, but I think just in general, what I've heard from across the country is the public power challenges, they're not huge surprises, but they are there. The changing customer expectations. I would say we have long understood that there were a variety of customers we serve, industrial customers, commercial customers, and we provide them customizable options when they interface with us. What has really changed is on the residential side. While we've always had low income customers and maybe some specialized needs there, we are now seeing a very granular difference in our residential customer expectations. We still see people who want to just give me my bill, keep my lights on. I don't really, that's all I need. That's all I need from you. We have that side. And then we have the whole other side is I want everything. I want the EVs. I want the solar rooftop. I want, battery storage. I want the utility to help me manage my energy. I want to know what's going on at every moment. I want to know what if I have an outage, when I'm going to be back on as quickly as possible. And then we have everything in between, right? So that is a big change, and that really has caused my members across the country, public power utilities across the country, to really take a step back and start changing their mindset about how they're interfacing with customers. And certainly industrial and commercial customers have changed their expectations to a degree as well. But I think that shift in the residential side is very interesting and very, very much a sea change. Addressing climate change concerns and related regulatory complexity. Again, this is no surprise. It's being dealt with. And let me just emphasize, of those 2,000 public power utilities, we are in deep red and deep blue communities and everything in between. So we are dealing with this in a very holistic way when we're talking about addressing climate change or greenhouse gas emissions reductions, or clean energy, however we want to couch it. There is regulatory complexity coming down the pike from the states in some cases, from localities in other cases, and then from the federal government. While there's no climate change legislation pending, there are regulations that the Environmental Protection Agency is promulgating already that have impacts on natural gas fired generation and coal generation, even in the absence of comprehensive efforts in legislation. We already talked about managing weather and other hazards. Understanding digitalization versus cybersecurity, which I already talked about as a classic yin and yang. How do you build that in from the front end? If you're a smaller utility who has not yet digitized their grids, that's an opportunity as well to kind of do that. But for those of us those of our members who already have digitization or digitalization on their grids, managing that cybersecurity over time is a challenge. It is. Balancing changing political winds, enough said there, just making sure that we understand we're really sitting in the middle, have to understand, that things may change over time in terms of who's in charge. We need to maintain relationships on both sides of the aisle. That's what we do as public power, especially at the federal level. We are very focused on maintaining relationships and champions. Interdependencies with other sectors. I sort of talked about this already in terms of the natural gas piece, and really was highlighted during Winter Storm Uri, but we know we have interfaces with other sectors beyond natural gas as well that we really depend on. Supply chain. Prior to this last 6 months or a year, we were really talking about supply chain on cybersecurity, on digital components coming over from China or other countries like China that we were concerned about, but mainly China. Now we're talking about basic supply chain concerns, right? Across the country, distribution transformers are very much a supply chain concern. Somewhat, we've heard also bucket trucks and sort of parts related to bucket trucks. So we are concerned going into the storm season. We are working with our other trade association brethren and also meeting with manufacturers on what can be done to help alleviate this constraint. We are discouraging hoarding. It's tough. We don't want to get into a situation like in the pandemic with toilet paper on distribution transformers, but it's tough to not want to hoard. We get that as well. But we are working on some federal options, also sharing transformers, sharing materials, again, working with the manufacturers to see if things can be done to alleviate this constraint in the short term. And that is an opportunity as well, but I wanted to sit on that one a little bit. Other environmental regulatory proposals I mentioned that you can kind of still squeeze our industry on other environmental proposals that are coming down the pike. Workforce availability is a challenge. It was a challenge before the pandemic. It's a challenge now. Acknowledging the need for ongoing education, given the lack of understanding of our business. Okay, so that's a challenge. We need to understand that people do not understand our industry. They just don't. Recognizing our blind sides. Who should we be worried about that we're not worried about, both in our industry and also within the public power community? I think enough said there. All right, public power opportunities. So this is just kind of a reaction to that. We can tell our story on more platforms than we've ever had. We have social media, let's embrace it. And I will admit in this very public forum that I don't usually post on social media myself. It's my team who's posting for me because I trust them to do that. Understanding that we need to tell our story, we can do so in more of those arenas than maybe we have ever in the past. And again, not that social media, it doesn't have its own challenges, but we can use that to our advantage in telling our story and trusting our staff to do that for us if we need to. Better educating our policymakers and creating champions within our policymaker community. We don't have to have everyone love us. We just have to have people who are real strong supporters and within the policymaker community, but also just generally in the community, business leaders, community leaders, labor leaders. Making sure we have developed those relationships and maintain them and they really understand, because it can be daunting to educate everyone about everything, right? We don't want to try to boil the ocean. And so thinking very strategically about how we tell our story. This is something I hear about and talk about throughout the country. Leveraging federal dollars, just, as we talk about this IIJA funding and other federal dollars that may come down the pike, it always comes with strings attached, but it can be an opportunity. You just have to weigh those pros and cons like you would anything else. What does that look like? What is it worth pursuing based on your overall revenue, et cetera? Continuing to leverage our collective knowledge and resources. We do that in events and forums, webinars, conferences, really understanding what's going on with each other so that we don't make the same mistakes, or that we learn success stories and we don't think that we're going it alone. We're not. Or we don't try to reinvent the wheel, however we want to put it. I think that's really important. And it's really a hallmark of the public power community that we share that information with each other. It's really important. Developing and maintaining partnerships. The traditional ones are kind of with each other, with our state associations, our regional associations, our joint action agencies, maybe with other utilities who are in our business with us. Even though sometimes we don't always get along with our other utility brethren, a lot of times we do. They understand what our business is. But sometimes there are non-traditional arenas where we could engage. I call them frenemies. You still have to watch out in those partnership opportunities, maybe with a, telecom provider or, an oil and gas provider where you have a relationship, but they may want your business. Microsoft, others. I mean, this is thinking about, again, there's people who may want our business, but we also need to partner with. So how do we balance that out? We talk about this a lot. It's an opportunity to engage. Remembering who we are and why we're in the business of public service. This is really important for public power. We're very mission driven, and this is so important to tout and to talk about, and almost to do the humble bragging about. We often don't want to talk about how much it takes to keep the lights on in all hazards and restoring power after a hurricane. It's a group effort. We have crews coming in from all over the country, as you all know, to help each other out. And especially in the public power community, there's a real spirit of service. It reminds me of, I was a military brat. It reminds me of the military service that my father performed and my brother. And it's very mission driven, and we really need to understand and embrace that. And we do get calls all the time from major cities about municipalizing and creating a public power utility in their communities. We get it every year. There's conversations in San Diego going on about municipalizing that town. Next, creating future leaders and thinking differently about our workforce are kind of a couple of the same. Really thinking about, again, I talked about social media, embracing people who know things that we don't know yet, or that we haven't traditionally done, as we try to meet those evolving customer expectations. We have to employ things like data scientists now. Who knew, right, that we would have to do that? So embracing and thinking differently about our workforce, also thinking about bringing in more diverse people into our workforce, representing our communities that we serve. Females in line work, it's a tough one. We haven't seen very many females in line work, but line workers it's a constrained group of people. We don't have enough line workers in the country, especially in public power. If we embrace more women in line work, maybe we would alleviate that constraint, for example. And then creating future leaders really is empowering them to do what they need to do. We already talked about, we represent a microcosm of a diffuse but also strong country. And when we come together as public power across the country, it's very powerful, and it's very powerful to policymakers. I talked about implementation of IIJA, et cetera. So APPA's response to these opportunities and challenges, I already talked about some of what we're doing under our pillars, so I'm not going to go through these too much, but I want to end with a phrase that I think really sums up where we are as an industry across the country, which hopefully some of you all remember Casey Kasem, who was a radio personality for a long time, and he signed off every time with, we need to keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. And I think that's really sums up these opportunities and challenges quite well. We have to keep the lights on while we're transitioning into the future. Thank you very much for having me, and I'm happy to answer questions if need be.
Joy, thank you for your presentation. Any questions?
Joe, you've been involved now for a year, and that your experience has been.
Yeah, it's been great. And I'll just say that the education and advocacy part that Joy was talking about is huge. So once a month, we do virtual Policymaker Council meetings, and they're half an hour at the most. But what's great is there's always a legislative update and also the priority update, and just where APPA is on advocacy, so that we can be in sync. And if there are differences, it's fed right back up to Joy's team and all that. And I'll just say, even like the Build Back Better Act, all that's sort of hang fire right now. What I think is good is APPA is leaning forward. So when that thing finally passes in some version, I don't think we're going to be losing much ground in updating where we need to go for whatever version is passed, which is extremely important. And on the infrastructure bill, very proactive on what affects us, JEA, as well as public power in general, and what we need to be doing on it. So I'll just say, from a Policymaker Council point of view, those monthly updates are huge, very beneficial. And then also you're very frequently too giving your take on things and sending us information. So it's all out there. And I think the proof is in the pudding with Kurt Wilson and Nancy Kilgo and the other JEA folks on Jay's team who participate too. I'll ask them, hey, does this make sense? Is it in sync? And yes, it's always in sync too. So I think we got a great relationship with them, and it's very educational. So I'm getting a lot out of it, Joy.
Joy, I have a question that's a little bit of a tangent, so I apologize. You know, I've been very concerned about the shift in, I think it's great in many ways, to electric vehicles. But we're going to leave ourselves with no money to pay for roads. So and more exposure to grid protection, and people can't get their power to their vehicles. Has that been a policy dialogue at all?
So on the funding for roads, we're not engaged in that part of the conversation. So I don't want to get over my skis here and speak on that. But certainly there is a lot of dialogue about, and kind of that yin and yang, to use that phrase again, of moving into the electric vehicle space, having our eggs kind of in the one basket of electricity rather than a little bit of a diversification of the transportation sector. So there's a huge opportunity, obviously, for electrification for our industry that we want to embrace. But at the same time, we have to think a longer term about the reliability needs. We're already at 99.999% reliability in our industry. We won't even be able to tolerate we'll have to get even closer to 100, you know, in the event that the vehicles are reliant on electricity too. So how do we do that? What's the marketplace going to be for we use diesel generators in emergencies all the time. Is diesel fuel going to even be available once we fully electrify, right? I mean, these are a few decades away issues, but I think
Close though.
I think we are having that dialogue that we're thinking about microgrids. We're thinking about, you know, enhancing that redundancy in the system, but I don't think we're there yet. So, I mean, I think it's the conversation's occurring, but the solutions haven't presented themselves fully yet.
Great, thank you.
I was thinking a lot along the same lines Marty was, with just the grid's ability to handle it. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, internal combustion engines are not going away anytime soon, but, you know, just the increased number of cars and so forth, can our grid handle it? And obviously that needs to be forefront.
Right. There's a lot of building that has to be done, and you already heard about the supply chain constraints, right? So you're in the construction business, I know, and so there's even the home building that's going on, and there's constraints there. So yeah, there's some work we have to do. I think that is you all identified an additional challenge that I can put on my slides for future conversations. But, you know, making sure that we understand the impacts to our infrastructure, as well as we build out the EV infrastructure. And is it going to be able to be managed? I think we plan on it to be, but again, we're facing some headwinds right now in some areas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joy. Yep.
Can I ask-
Yep, yeah, absolutely.
You're familiar with the attempts that were made to sell JEA. And I think as a citizen of this town, most of us said, well, who cares? Why should we, I mean, does it matter when you flip on the lights, whether it's Florida Power and Light or JEA? And I know this is a big part of what you all do, but as a board member, I haven't ever really been brought up to date of why public power is important, or is it just something that was an acronym from the 1890s? And I think that's something you could do for us. I don't know whether others have the same need, but we need it. And if there's some way you could help us on that, that'd be great.
Well, I'm certainly happy to circle back around as well and work with Jay and his team, but just for purposes of, if I could have a brief response to that.
Please.
Public power is exceedingly more reliable. We have the data to show it. Energy Information Administration data from the federal government, so neutral data, shows that we have half the amount of outages in public power as our investor-owned and cooperative colleagues. With the co-ops, they're in highly rural areas, long lines. There's a little bit of a different picture, right? I think we can compare ourselves more directly to the investor-owned utilities. We do have some spaces where in the country where we look more like a co-op as well, but we are exceedingly more reliable. And I believe that stems from the fact that our workers live and work in the communities that they serve. They care about turning the lights on back in their communities if the lights are out, and they want to keep them on. They want to maintain a reliable system and spend the money to do that. So it's a huge focus for us. We're also focused on reliability, and generally our rates are lower because we're not for profit. We don't have to send money back to shareholders. Not that having shareholders is a bad thing, but in the case of electricity, which underpins everything we do in modern society, those dollars matter, and we care about the dollars as well. We also are responsive to community needs. I talked about us being in deep blue, deep red, and everything in between. We do what our communities want us to do. And in some cases, our communities are very forward leaning when it comes to addressing clean energy, and they want to spend the money there, right, to do that. Others want to focus more on hardening, for storm response or, whatever the case may be, and spend their dollars there. Some do both, right? So it's a very responsive. If your headquarters is 4 states away for an investor-owned utility, you can't get the attention of the leadership to do what your specific community wants. And that's why we see efforts in very large cities, Boulder, San Diego, the whole state of Maine was looking at municipalization last year, looking at this business model because you have a responsiveness that doesn't exist in the investor-owned utility side. Again, we work very closely with our investor-owned utilities in many cases, particularly in the DC area, but there is a fundamental difference. And it is that community focus, and it's the responsiveness to the community as well as some of the other areas that I mentioned.
Thank you.
Jay, you have a,
I do. I want to thank you, Joy, for being here and covering this, and it goes back to the 5 strategic priorities that APPA has. 2 of them are, I shortened them into, we're going to do our stuff better. So you're working with association excellence and a business plan to do your job better. The 3 that touch us, advocating for public power is exactly what that question, and they do. Joy, I think you stepped into this role in January of 20, like two seconds before COVID hit, and even during our process here, partly because of the timing, we actually had one of the presentations at City Council was your predecessor, Sue Kelly, came and spoke to the City Council about the value and why it was important. So we've had that support close to the APPA kind of support. And then the help that they give us with technology, regulatory, doing new things and looking at our workforce has been helpful for us. And I think we also help the larger community of public power. But mostly I want to tell you, thank you for being here to share a little bit about what's going on in the industry. If there's a number of messages that we can take from this, one of them is that there is a lot of messages. There's a lot of things that are happening, that are going on, that impact us. And we have we could give some similar updates on all of the different areas that we're responsible for. Not just the vertical of water and wastewater and electric, but also the financing and the customer and the engineering. And there's just so much, there's so much going on in the world, and it helps us to have advocates like APPA and Joy and her team to help support that. So thank you for being here. And I appreciate that you all asked for and wanted to have this industry update kind of focus, and we'll keep on working on that and be able to continue to get better answers for what you just asked. Thank you.
Jea Performance update, Carl.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Stein and members of the board. My name is Carl Becker. I am the JEA Manager of Benefit Services. For today's board meeting, I'm going to cover the metric summary, which includes data through February 28th, 2022. For this month's update, all metrics are currently on plan with the exception of electric O&M spend and fuel and purchase power costs. The March 22nd update from JD Power reflects upward movement in overall satisfaction, which is in line with the trend for utilities nationally. JEA is forecasted to retain the 2nd quartile ranking for the fiscal year. As we mentioned in the last update, electric O&M spend was negatively impacted by the Northside Generation Station outage running 17 days longer than planned, which also impacted how we ran and maintained our natural gas fleet. While this metric is still projected below our year-end goal, it is trending in the right direction. Last month, we were projected to finish 10 million below the goal. Through February, the gap has now narrowed to 7 million. The fiscal year 2022 FNPP expense projections increased by 31 million this month due to the increased cost of a petroleum coke. Fuel prices continue to be challenged due to the supply chain issues, which has been further exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The FNPP expense increase was 26 million less than it would have been absent JEA's fuel hedging efforts. For safety, JEA achieved an important safety satisfaction milestone in March where 2 million hours were worked without an OSHA-defined lost time injury. This noteworthy accomplishment is especially encouraging when taking into consideration the numerous hazards in our industry that we face each and every workday. Pay for performance is currently projected at 2.66 of base salaries. This concludes the monthly performance update. We are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Any questions? With that, we'll move to the unbeatable team workforce planning talent inventory. Blake?
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Stein, and good morning, Board. And congratulations, Mr. Baker, and I would like to add my personal thank you to you, sir. I'm very excited to be able to be with you this morning and talk about workforce planning and talent inventory. Really happy this is following the APPA presentation. I think that this will dovetail very nicely into a couple of points that Joy made, specifically around employee and leadership development and skills, and then, of course, looking forward into the future and what we need to do to develop our teams. This is our long-term workforce planning model. And as you're all aware, building the unbeatable team is one of our strategic focus areas. And our holistic approach includes effective hiring and retention strategies, creating an environment of continuous learning for growth and development of our employees, long-term range risk mitigation through knowledge transfer, and finally, continuous succession planning to grow talent. The goal is really to create an ecosystem where talent, knowledge, and skills can effortlessly flow through the organization. In January, you all saw a presentation on diversity, equity, and inclusion that highlighted some of the elements of our hiring and retention strategies. In an upcoming board presentation, we will provide a deeper dive into our employee development and knowledge transfer process. And today, we will review some talent inventory and succession planning best practices and how JEA's process aligns to those and where we're headed over the next year to continue the growth of talent. So what is talent inventory and succession planning? Well, talent inventory is simply a process of understanding what skills JEA employees have. Succession planning is identifying high potential employees, matching them for future growth opportunities, and intentionally investing in their development to ensure that we're ready when the opportunities are available. This list captures the best practices in talent inventory and succession planning processes and serves as our touchstone here at JEA as we look at our talent inventory and succession planning design. At JEA, our succession process not only focuses on the leadership roles, but also on our highly technically skilled workforce through our state-certified multi-year apprenticeship programs. We have several new leaders here at JEA, so we're spending time this year to appropriately train our leaders and making sure we're taking a consistent approach that aligns with these best practices. And most important, having regular conversations with our employees on the front end of succession planning to understand both their immediate and long-term interest, as well as sharing with them the employees on the back end regarding succession plans that they're on and where to focus development for the individual to ensure they're ready for roles that match their skills and potential. As part of the appointed employee succession plan process, JEA identifies critical positions, assesses retention risks of all appointed employees, and determines potential development for individuals who might fill critical roles in the future. As this graphic shows, 14% of our positions are in leadership, 22% in professional roles, 40% in the highly technical roles, and the remaining 24% in our staff roles, such as support roles. An example of a support role would be my team in learning and development. To assess the risk for each area, we look at the combination of retirement eligibility, flight risk, availability of talent, and affordability and internal readiness. I'll draw your attention to the MISC mitigation efforts that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. Continually assessing and planning, succession planning, knowledge documentation, early hiring overlap, long-range forecasting, and so on. Really, the point of that is to express that we're not only looking at the mitigation efforts in the immediate future, but what's really important is that we're thinking through all of those roles and the skills that are needed for those roles in the future. What do those roles need to look like 1 to 3 years from now, and making sure that we have a mitigation plan in place to address that. In May of 21, we enhanced the appointed talent inventory and review process. This is an ongoing process, meaning that participants may update their resume and career aspirations at any time. Just to give you a feel, we had 167 appointed employees that updated their talent profile during that time frame. And out of that, some numbers here for you, 119 individuals are interested in management positions. Those are primarily in manager and director levels. We had leaders then reviewed those inputs and risk assessments, and we had updated our succession plans. Since spring of 21, we have had considerable movement with over 40 appointed employees moving into different positions. I want to draw your attention to the right-hand side again, where are we headed then for the future? Well, we will continue with our updated talent inventory process. As I mentioned before, that is ongoing, and we're focused currently on our appointed employees that have taken on new roles within the last year. We'll continue our discussions with employees, not only about their interests and aspirations, but also any type of development that we feel is necessary to continue making that process as transparent to them as possible. And understanding work from wherever and how that impacts our succession planning approach. What do we need to consider in the next 1 to 3 years in terms of how our approach to work from anywhere may change what we're needing to look at. And then learning from an employee engagement survey. We plan on having that in the early spring, and we know that we'll get some great feedback from our employees in terms of where we need to head in terms of talent and development. This concludes our presentation on workforce planning and succession planning, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Yeah, Blake, good presentation on the previous slide for attrition risk on the upper right, where it says leadership and professional, both at high risk. How do you define high risk?
Yes, sir. The high risk is really, there are a couple of different elements to that, but there are two major impacts that are involved there. One is that we've done such a great job of internal development and talent pipeline with JEA that many of in fact, the majority of our management and leadership have been developed internally and grown up internally. Well, the downside of that is that we have a lot of tenure in that group in their career and then in their age. And so that is one of the elements of the high risk in terms of our professional and leadership. Also, a part of that risk is that in the Jacksonville community and the greater Northeast Florida community, there are a lot of opportunities for management and for professional leadership roles. As opposed to some of the technical skills, there's not as much opportunity. And so there's a great opportunity for individuals to move on in those particular roles. That would be two of the major ones. I will turn that over also to David Emanuel if there's anything you'd like to add to that risk piece.
I think you captured it well, Blake, but I also think some of it is just the experiences that we have together. So we are a new team. We're still proving ourselves. So that kind of adds a little backdrop to that risk.
Thanks.
One specific to succession planning, since we did have feedback from all of us during the board assessment that we needed to do a better job of succession planning. I would challenge all of us to look at each of your positions as well. And make sure, Jay, that you've got a succession plan that gets people to your executive team pretty quickly in the event you have an opening. Because you've done an amazing job hiring a very diverse team, and we want to make sure that the succession to get to the top positions looks diverse as well.
Yeah, thank you. And on the first question, our average age is 47, and our average age of directors, VPs, chiefs, while I don't have that number, is higher than that.
Wow. Okay.
That's part of what that is. As far as succession planning, one of the things that I think is important is absolutely we have to do at the senior level succession planning. And that oftentimes has been what we mean by succession planning, is that we have to do the whole company. We have to go through the entire organization to be sure that we're not only looking at diversity, but the skill sets that people have. And that's what this helps us do. There's added emphasis on being sure that we are training and teaching, doing the things we need to do for people to get to grow in their career that also supports the community. But this is the whole organization,
Just, David, when we met, what was the percentage of employees who are eligible to retire?
About 32%.
Yeah.
It's a big number.
It's a big number. That scares me.
Yeah. But on the other hand, we have a lot of employees trying to fill jobs when they come open. So that's on the good side. Thank you, Blake. The stakeholders relations, Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Reaching out and listening to our diverse Duval community it's fundamental to building community. Every single JEA employee is an ambassador and a community servant. Telling our positive story and learning from our customers and stakeholders is a constant and consistent focus for us. And so today, I'll highlight just a few ways that we're engaging our stakeholders and our community. So our customers always benefit, and Joy touched on this, when we engage with policy leaders and stakeholder organizations to shape regulations that govern how we deliver our core services or economic and social conditions that surround us. So last fall and over the winter, we worked hard to renew JEA's relationship with our Northeast Florida state senators and representatives, and I think they now better understand our reach into the community, and they really welcome our engagement on policy issues. To name a few: stewardship of the Floridan Aquifer, cybersecurity protections for critical infrastructure, and as touched on earlier, comprehensive planning for electrification of transportation. We talked about our trip to DC in late February, early March, and that was part of our ongoing effort to talk with local, state, and federal officials, as well as a diverse set of Northeast Florida voices about how to tap that IIJA money, federal infrastructure grants and loans, and bring it home to our community. APPA has been incredibly helpful guiding us through 1,035-page bill into a manageable set of buckets and programs that we're actively exploring. We're in that effort for the long haul, I should say. So I hope to update you on it from time to time over the next year. So as federal programs on clean drinking water, grid resilience, fleet electrification, and weatherization, just to name a few, send money to Florida, we are preparing to show how JEA and other local agencies and nonprofits, how we can work together to use those funds to improve lives and build community across Northeast Florida. Turning a little bit, community engagement is as fundamental as the fuel that we use to generate electrons and the water that we deliver. Community and stakeholder engagement, it's part of our fiber here. It helps us create and sustain trust among our community, the over 1 million local citizens who own JEA. Customers might see a television ad or like a social media post, but human connections are always the most meaningful way to show our dedication to our core values and building community. Hundreds of JEA volunteers meet our customers where they are by supporting activities across the community. So in April alone, our volunteers will build with Habijacks, clean up a local playground, pack food for donation to low-income families, and provide landscaping at a wild animal refuge. These experiences enrich our lives. They get us out in the community, and they help us meet our customers where they are. And they also help us to remember to put the customer at the center of everything that we do. Our employees also routinely volunteer in schools, supplementing STEM education and supporting craft academies that are developing the skilled workforce that we need and that JEA will need as the region continues to grow. And the systems that we use to deliver water and electricity evolve and become more complex. So now I want to take a few moments to show some collateral that we're very proud of. Last year, this board, you asked us to create and deliver messages that remind Jacksonville that everyone here benefits from owning their own electric and water utility. Our communications team and local partners worked over the winter to research the most effective ways to carry this message into our very diverse community. So the result is something that we hope you've seen on TV, heard on the radio, or liked on social media. We went back and forth a lot about the name because we love our brand, we love our tagline, and we don't want to dilute that. But at the same time, we wanted to be very clear that JEA is our community's utility. So with that, we can watch a very short video.
Local businesses are the heart of our community. You give us a place to come together, connect as neighbors and friends. You provide jobs that help our local economy grow stronger and represent the best that our city has to offer. At JEA, we proudly support local businesses by making it easier and more affordable for you to operate. Because you've invested a lot to be here for us, and you deserve a utility that's here for you. See how your JEA can help you grow at jeaforbusiness.com.
One ad. There are 4 other ads. We're running them on television and across digital platforms. You just saw the small business spot, and contemporaneously we're running an environmental spot. These have performed incredibly well. Our media and communications team updated me this morning that we've just crossed 10 million impressions. And that's very healthy. It has also directed a lot of traffic to our website. So a key feature of this campaign is to offer practical tips and point them back to our expertise. And part of that research told us that people want to know more about the assistance that we offer. They want to know more about how to save, how to access rebates. They want to learn about efficiency. We have a wealth of expertise to share. So there are 3 more campaign themes coming over the next few weeks. In mid-April, we'll pull down the small business and environmental spots and put up customer solutions and community engagement. And then in May, before hurricane season, we'll emphasize our work on reliability, and we'll definitely tout the RP3 designation. We think these commercials tell the JEA story. We've enjoyed hearing that friends and family like them, but we'll definitely continue asking for feedback this summer, always trying to improve our public communications and making sure that they got the message about the value of owning their utility. So I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you so much for the opportunity to tell you about our stakeholder and community work.
How have the stakeholder meetings been going? You've had 2 or 3 of those now? Have they been well received? Are you getting what you want out of that forum?
Sure are. For the IRP, where we have completed 3 of those meetings, March 9th, we're very happy to be able to host one in person, hybrid, but we did have a lot of the stakeholders come to JEA and meet each other in person for the first time. The goal set out at the beginning of having robust conversation and letting all viewpoints be aired. Feel incredibly positive about that. People are talking to each other about the future of JEA's generation and our service to the community. Our next meeting will be in mid-June, and in mid-May, because March to June, that's a little span of time, in mid-May, we'll present a written, digestible report to the stakeholders about our scenarios, 6 possible futures that we're looking at, and our supply side options.
Bless you. Yeah. Laura, thank you. Appreciate the update. Appreciate your team's work.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just one observation, not a question, but as it relates to economic development engagement, just a couple of weeks ago, the Jax USA Policy Council had our regular economic development luncheon, significant event downtown, and Jay and his team had a table and were front and center. And I just think that that's really important. It goes to the observation about the fundamental nature of relationships with other organizations and other people and other leaders throughout our community. And so just the presence there, having the privilege of chairing that board this year, I can tell you that the strength of this organization is a real asset as it relates to economic development efforts. And so again, just something as simple and fundamental, but important as your presence there, I think speaks volumes, and I appreciate it.
A shout out to you, Tom, for leading that Jax USA. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? The Fulton cut transmission lines. Ray.
Yes, good morning. Thank you, Chair Stein, members of the board. I'm here to give you an update on the Fulton cut lines. As Jay mentioned, there was a study that was done back in 2020. So if you spare me a little bit, I'm going to get a little bit granular on that because I think it's important to put this into context. So these lines that are in question, they are 6 of our high voltage transmission lines. Now, while most of our generation, approximately 90%, is on the north and west of the river, approximately half of our load is south and east of the river. Therefore, these lines are critical to provide energy to the substations to the south and the east. and are the means to provide power reliably to those customers. We did a study back in 2020 to investigate the feasibility of raising the lines to about 215 feet, which is approximately 30 feet higher than the SAG is right now. And in that study, because you have heard, which is very important about reliability and public power, that is cornerstone to us. So we looked at phasing construction, anything that would mitigate the risk when you're taking lines down, looking at when the demand was going to be low, coincident with that, and then just minimizing the downtime. The estimate for doing so was approximately $30 million. That was in 2020. So we are in the process now of updating that study, and we expect to have the results of that later this month. In addition to that, we are going to continue the discussions that we have been having with the parties and the partners to this endeavor, including Jacksport, the Corps, and OGC. Now, considering that this is a major project with significant capital expense, it is prudent for us, which we are doing, to analyze different funding and cost participation options. And so that gives you a very, very brief update as far as where we are, and I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
One other statement here is I've asked Jay to talk to Joe, to Lieutenant Joe DeSalvo, to be our liaison from the board, to work with Jay, his team, and the affected parties to see if we can work towards a thoughtful solution. So I appreciate, Joe. This is the second easy assignment you've been given. Vogel being one. But, so I'm sure there are questions, but I think to have somebody from the board that's focused, and I appreciate you agreeing to do this.
No problem, Bobby. Happy to.
John?
We have had discussions with JPA for at least a year, going back to when Paul was here, and raising the lines is something that needs to be done, because otherwise the ships have gotten bigger over time, and the dredging, while in the first analysis, the Corps said you don't need to raise your lines. Well, now they're saying, yeah, you do. And it's because ships are getting bigger, and the dredging that's going on at the port would literally be wasted if the lines were not raised. The issue becomes, and imagine that is who pays for it is the budding block. And I think Jay has been very steadfast and very correct in saying JEA's ratepayers should not be paying for it. If there are others that can, whether it's the city, whether it's JPA, whether it's the federal government, that's fine. But we are taking a huge risk by moving these power lines, raising them. Half our people are relying on those power lines. And so this is just, it's $30 million, but it's way more than that in terms of risk and reliability of our system. So I encourage you to work with the city and JPA on getting this done and making sure it's done. And I think the important thing is we've got to just sit down and figure out who's going to pay for it. And until that happens, nothing will happen.
Well, John, thank you. And, I hope we can, one thing that has come out is, we hadn't been at the table. We have been at the table, and we need to continue to be at the table. And we need to work towards a solution that benefits all of Jacksonville. So I know, Jay, you've been working on it, and Joe, I appreciate you agreeing to work with this and hopefully come up with a solution. Any other thoughts? Jay and Jody, Clint Vogel. Oh, Jordan, I'm sorry.
I'll go sit back down.
Well, this is a new promotion for Jordan, and we're exciting. He's one of our young stars in this organization. So congratulations.
Chair, I appreciate that. And good morning to you all. Good to be with you. I'm excited this morning to offer an update on our new business opportunities. We first talked about this last November. And I'll just say at the front, the progress we'll share today is the result of many of our unbeatable team members here. I just have the privilege of communicating it to you all this morning. As you're probably aware, JEA has for many years now, almost 2 decades, operated a chilled water system that is mainly concentrated in the downtown area. We have 3 plants, one in Springfield, one here in the Central Business District, and one over in the Sports Entertainment Complex. We have just 11 existing customers, and we think there's an opportunity to grow this system. And we're finalizing a chilled water rate study that the board will hear about more about in the coming months. We look forward to sharing that at the May Finance and Audit Committee meeting. But one of the unbeatable team members here that runs our chilled water operations, he's our district energy manager, is David Williams. And I'd like for him to share with you in this brief video more about our chilled water operations and its benefits to our customers.
My name is David Williams, and I am the manager for District Energy Operations. What we do is we provide chilled water, cold water to our customers, and our customers take that water and utilize it in their air conditioning systems for cooling and dehumidifying their buildings. So some of our customers are the City of Jacksonville. We serve the Veterans Memorial Arena, the Duval County Courthouse, State Attorney's Office, and UF Health. We also serve the JEA Plaza, and we'll be serving the new headquarter building very shortly when it comes online. Some of the advantages of our customers utilizing our service is for the customer not to have a big capital expense of building their own plants, having their own facilities to operate and to maintain during the life of the equipment. Some of the other advantages are the customer not having to use the square footage of building their own plant. They can now utilize that space for their own better purposes within the building. So we do a lot of preventive maintenance here at the facilities. We'll do annual chiller cleanups, we'll do pump maintenance and clean the cooling towers, all this to keep the system reliable and dependent.
So as you saw in the video, JEA does serve the veterans, ViStar Veterans Memorial Arena in the Sports and Entertainment District. We also serve the 121 Financial Baseball Park. And currently we are working with the Jacksonville Jaguars to serve chilled water to the new Sports Performance facility, which is expected to open next summer. As part of that project and with an eye towards the future, the pipeline that will serve the new Sports Performance facility, JEA is going to upsize that pipe to have the capacity to serve TIAA Bank Field in the future as that opportunity comes along, given the condition of their existing system at the stadium. We're also well positioned and are in conversations this week even to potentially serve some of the new shipyards development that has been discussed recently. And we have had many conversations with interested customers more in the Central Business District and our Springfield plant about connecting to the chilled water system. So we're very encouraged by the level of interest that we're seeing in this system, and we'll continue to update the board as we make strides there.
Right.
Sure. Go ahead.
So when we put the chilled water plan in place, and this is unfair, do you recall how many clients we anticipated putting on that system?
I do not. I'm sorry.
think it was more than 11.
I would agree with that.
And I want to applaud your proactive approach in trying to work with people to get people on the system. And when we do the cost study, I really hope that we're going to look at the cost for people to do their own chilled water plant, because when we did the DuPont Center, we did the Jesse, we ended up, it was cost prohibitive for us to connect. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward. The Finance Committee can't wait to see that, because I think it is really important that we continue to work with people to get them on this grid. So
Yes, ma'am.
thank you again for your proactive approach.
Thank you. We agree with you. We're working on a tool, I'll call it a calculator now, to help our customers who are interested do at least an initial evaluation. Of course, it'll take some engineering analysis, to be certain, but we agree with you that our customers need that initial tool to evaluate the merits of chilled water versus their own system. So that's underway now.
I figured it was. I just had to ask. Thank you,
Yes,
George.
ma'am. Thank you. So moving on, another opportunity we have has to do with JA's existing fiber network, which we utilize really to support the operation of our core businesses, the electric and water business. Currently, and I was glad to hear Joy Ditto touch on this, JA is in the midst of grid modernization efforts to do with our fiber core assets, to make sure that they're providing benefits operationally and so that we can provide improved service to our customers. Long-term, this solution will allow us to leverage data in a way that provides things like automation and virtual intelligence, but also improves grid resilience and reliability. In concert with that study, which is really for the benefit of our operations, again, like I said, we're also going to conduct a broadband market study to give us some insight into the dynamics of broadband service in Northeast Florida. This survey, which we think will begin in about 2 weeks, will help inform JA's decision to potentially pursue opportunities in the broadband market. And so that study will take about 6 to 8 weeks to complete. And it's important to note that that study is really the first step in what would be many for JA to be able to pursue that business opportunity, and will give us, again, insight into whether we should take additional steps to really consider whether or not we should be in the broadband market. And then finally, there are other business opportunities that JA is exploring. And while we say they are new business opportunities, they are really just thinking about them in new ways. As you can see, a lot of this is really related to our core business. And so I'll just highlight on this slide, you see there on the left-hand side, the district energy systems. And so we've said that meant chilled water at JA for the last 20 years, but really there are many facets to that. It extends beyond just chilled water, as you can see there. And we heard some of this already discussed today, like solar and distributed generation. And so we will continue as we move forward to engage our customers. It's important to understand their needs. It's important to understand how we can best meet their needs as we seek to improve lives and build community in pursuing these opportunities. And so with that, I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Our solar partnership, where is that?
You want to do that one?
We actually just got a notice from our partner about a force majeure opportunity through the contract. So we have a meeting this afternoon actually scheduled to talk about it. So it's in flux as far as them being able to complete in the 2022 timeframe on our solar projects. And so we're going to be evaluating that and talking with the EDF folks in the next few days.
But we did, in understanding that that was a problem, we have gone out and have a PPA that's in place that allows us to get some solar from the market to be able to have a higher level of renewable energy, and it helps us to serve the customers that were interested in being a part of that. So we've solved a problem, and now we're working on another
Yeah. Rick, are you aware of the background at all?
No.
Okay. At some point, you and Jay get together and just walk through.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Now another opportunity to talk about is Plant Vogel update.
Thank you, Chair Stein, and thank you to the board members for allowing us to talk about Plant Vogel and the latest update. And if you recall, last February, there had been an announcement on the delayed schedule and more cost that Southern had announced that required and triggered a vote of the owners. And I had mentioned then that likely they would all vote. So on February 25th, all the owners agreed and voted to continue with the project. And the timeline that was established in the February reports had Unit 3 going online the fourth quarter of 2022 or the first quarter of 23, and Unit 4 late 23. For JEA's planning purposes, we had bumped those timeframes out a bit. For planning purposes, we're saying June of 23 for Unit 3 and September of 24 for Unit 4. As the estimated timeframes. The latest MEAG reports that we've been getting kind of dovetails with that timeline. So we're not changing that at this time, but we continue to monitor it. We also hosted several executives from Southern Company on March 22nd. And one of the items of interest that we talked through was Plant Vogel and the idea that we are watching the project and wanting to get nuclear power in our portfolio sooner rather than later. We're doing everything we can from our position with the BPA through MEAG and continuing to stay on the front of investigating and watching. The ITAC closures is the biggest issue. The ITAC stands for Inspection, Test, Analysis, Acceptance Criteria. And that's where they are primarily, is doing the testing and closing out of all those ITACs. And we continue to watch and monitor their efforts to do that. That's about all I got. Anybody have any questions?
Do we have a plan to have one of those reps come to a board meeting so they can brief not only us, but the community?
I believe at the February board member, you had made that request. And when, again, we talked to them, but we haven't made the ask of them to come as of yet.
So our first step in that process was to meet them, them here, and then we'll figure out the right people to come update us. Since our contracting agreement is with MEAG, it may be that it would be MEAG would be the update to do that. But we're working through that to try to get the right people. We are staying engaged regularly with MEAG, now with Southern, and we continue to talk to everyone that we can talk to try to stay as aware of what is going on as possible. And several months ago, when we stretched out what our planning horizon was for when it was going to be completed, I still feel comfortable that stretching it out was appropriate. In the next month or so, if we don't see some more progress, we're going to have to revisit even our estimate, which is several months more delayed than what the owners are suggesting right now. So we're still trying to stay as aware and up to date as we can, and then get the right people to give you other updates. I want to be sure that when they come and give us an update, it's something beneficial and of value. So we're going to keep working on it.
Let me ask you another question, Jay. Uranium prices are starting to move. How much effect is that to the overall cost? Let's say we get on plan. How much will that affect cost?
The first part of your sentence was that's the real focus right now, is how do we get there? And then we have had the beginnings of conversations about what the status is on the uranium for this plant. And we've talked to MEAG about the uranium. They already have 2 units that are up and running. And they have some confidence that we will be in pretty good shape on that, even with the uranium prices coming up. And I think that of the things that we're concerned about on costs, that is lower on the list, but it's still a concern.
Well, appreciate you guys focus on that. It's, yeah, important to get that thing moving. Old and other new business.
Bobby, so for Unit 3, for fuel cost, I thought that was set once the 103G letter was issued. Or am I thinking?
Short term, we're fine on cost. It's what is the uranium market going to do long term whenever they have to get other replacement, and how do they get it? So that's short term. They've already got fuel for Unit 3. They've already got, we're good on the initial.
Right. Okay.
There'll be a time when they need more.
Sure.
That's the longer term concern.
Thanks.
Any old and other new business? Chair's report. The only thing I want to mention is congratulate Tom. He will begin the new role as Executive VP and Chief Mission Integration Officer of Ascension. Ascension is the largest Catholic hospital group in the country. So congratulations. Yeah. This meeting is adjourned. And the next meeting is May 24th.